The crimson scrawl bled across the fog glass. Yield, endure. No salutation, no explanation, no gentle warning. Just those stark words mirroring the silent scream inside me. I just stepped from the steamy cascade of the shower, water still dripping from my hair, a towel barely clinging to my hips. And there it was, an omen etched in the very lipstick she favored for her most dangerous moods. What if this wasn't a warning, but a prophecy? For a long moment I stood, motionless, watching the defiant red run into streaky rivulets as condensation snaked downwards. My pulse didn't quicken. Instead, a profound emptiness settled in my chest. This was no twisted joke. I recognized her precise, elegant script. I knew that specific shade of fiery rouge she wore when she intended to dominate. This wasn't the prelude to some passionate reconciliation. This, I instinctively understood, was her final, calculated maneuver. And the most unsettling part? I wasn't even remotely surprised. 3 days had passed since our last word. Not a screaming match, not even the icy silence of a cold war. Just a profound, suffocating quiet, an unspoken challenge, daring one of us to fracture first. Davina Sterling always won that particular contest. I once believed it was because of her unyielding strength. Now I knew it was merely my own chronic inability to ever walk away. But today, something had finally snapped. I entered our bedroom, pulling out the old battered suitcase she'd always forbidden me to touch. My hands trembled as the zipper shrieked open. I packed nothing extravagant, only the bare essentials for survival. A worn hoodie, my phone charger, a small bag of almonds, a habit she despised, especially in bed. Downstairs in the sun-drenched kitchen, she sat, her back to me, serenely eating toast as if the world hadn't shifted on its axis. Not a flicker of acknowledgement, not a single sound from her lips. So I departed. No dramatic speech, no scene, no slamming doors. I moved through that house like a wisp of smoke, an unseen ghost. As the lock clicked softly behind me, a chilling realization hit. She hadn't believed I would actually do it. She expected me to crawl back as I always had, but not this time. And the fallout? Ready to learn the shocking truth of how she punished my defiance? That's precisely why I'm speaking now. The first night after I severed ties, I found refuge in a forgotten motel 2 towns over, the kind where fluorescent hallway lights flickered with a life of their own, and the ancient vending machine greedily consumed your coins. I lay on the stiff, impersonal bed, eyes fixed on the cracked ceiling plaster, the words, yield, endure, looping endlessly in my mind. Was it a threat? A grim promise? All I knew was the deafening silence from her end. No texts, no calls, no frantic inquiries about my whereabouts. That silence, I understood, spoke volumes louder than any accusation. On the second day, a desperate need for confirmation of my own existence led me to log into our shared financial accounts. That's when the true message hit, not in crimson lipstick, but in the brutal language of digits. Every single cent had been meticulously siphoned into a separate account, hers alone. Our joint savings, my most recent paycheck, even the 2 years' worth of vacation funds I'd painstakingly accumulated by foregoing daily coffees and extra overtime, all vanished. A chilling memo accompanied the final transaction. Your choice. My chest seized, a suffocating vice gripping my lungs. It wasn't just the betrayal, it was the chilling, clinical precision of it all. As if she'd meticulously planned this, anticipated this exact moment of rebellion, solely to unleash the meticulously crafted consequences. I remained rooted in that dingy room for another 2 hours, staring at the screen, my hands too unsteady to even attempt a reply. Then I did what any man, broken and desperate, might do. I called her. She allowed it to ring twice, then answered. No hello. No, where are you? Just her voice, unnervingly calm, distantly aloof. Have you learned your lesson, Hale? I couldn't draw breath. You emptied the account, I managed to rasp. I didn't empty anything, she countered, her tone devoid of emotion. I merely relocated what was already mine. Then without another word, she disconnected the call. I sat there, utterly stunned, not just by the sheer cruelty, but by the audacious confidence in her voice. She knew I wouldn't fight back. She was daring me, pushing me to my absolute limit. And in that precise moment, a subtle, profound shift occurred within me. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even overcome with sadness. I was consumed by a searing embarrassment, not for her, but for myself, because I had constructed a life so precarious, so hopelessly unbalanced, that stepping away meant stepping into an abyss of nothingness. How much more could I lose before I finally broke? And the worst part? She still believed I lacked the backbone to truly resist, but this time, she was about to be profoundly mistaken. Sleep eluded me entirely that night. The drab walls of the motel room felt like they were pressing inward, demanding I make a move, any move. But my mind was trapped in an agonizing loop. How did I not see this coming? I'd always known Davina Sterling possessed a cold streak, but this was different. This wasn't a visceral reaction. This was a meticulously planned chess gambit, executed with chilling patience. And I, tragically, was still attempting to play checkers. The following morning, I dove into a flurry of phone calls, desperately trying to untangle what legally belonged to me. It quickly became devastatingly clear. When you sign away everything for the sake of convenience, you're essentially handing over every single piece of leverage. She'd ensured her name was the sole one on the house deed. She handled all the taxes. Even my car was a lease under her company's name. I was a mere tenant in my own existence. Around midday, I drove back to the city, but not to the house. I parked 2 streets away and simply observed. A new car gleamed in the driveway. A sleek, black coupe, still bearing a dealership sticker on its window. She was inside, no doubt sipping her artisanal matcha, engrossed in a true crime documentary, utterly unperturbed. For some inexplicable reason, that image struck me harder than anything else. Not the stolen funds, not the chilling message on the mirror, not even her calculated phone call. It was her profound tranquility, her quiet, almost celebratory air. As if my departure wasn't a loss, but her ultimate liberation. I didn't approach the door. I didn't call. I simply sat there, a desperate, pathetic figure, trying to grasp how I had become utterly irrelevant in my own marriage. Then the garage door rumbled open. I flinched, instinctively ducking lower in my seat. But it wasn't her. It was Finian Gray. He emerged, casually carrying a bag of groceries and a bottle of expensive wine tucked under his arm. He possessed a key. He didn't even bother to ring the doorbell. My face flushed with a sudden, scorching heat, then drained to an icy coldness. So this was the new narrative. I had been replaced before I even cleared the driveway. And yet, I still didn't storm the house. I didn't confront anyone. I drove away in a profound, unsettling silence. But this silence was not surrender. No, something inside me had irrevocably fractured, something dangerous. She wanted to play games. Fine. I was done folding my hand. The next time our paths crossed, her smile wouldn't last. I had no intricate plan, not initially. All I possessed was a swirling vortex of shame and a car that reeked faintly of stale fast food and abject failure. But as I aimlessly navigated the streets of the city that once felt like my sanctuary, a nascent idea began to coalesce in my mind. Not revenge, not precisely, but rather a quiet, unyielding truth. The kind of truth that doesn't need to shout to be heard. I started by reaching out to Nico Blackwood, an old friend we'd often double-dated with in the early days. We hadn't spoken in over a year. I kept my tone casual, but he immediately detected the tremor in my voice. "You okay, man?" he asked, the kind of question that carries immense weight when it comes from someone who genuinely knows you. I didn't disclose every detail, just enough about the vanished money, the mirror's sinister message, and Finian with his bottle of wine. Nico didn't offer much in the way of advice, but a mere 2 days later, my phone began buzzing with messages from people I hadn't heard from in months. "Is it true? You're serious? She actually did what?" It turned out Nico had talked. I hadn't explicitly asked him to, but he had. And the story in hushed tones spread with astonishing speed. Not in some melodramatic social media expose. This was far more subtle, more insidious. One friend whispering to another, a sister-in-law confiding in a cousin, co-workers exchanging glances and hushed words over lunch. Davina Sterling had always been obsessed with her public image. She meticulously curated every dinner party, every social media caption, every staged holiday photograph. She thrived on being the envied couple. Now that meticulously crafted facade was cracking, not because I had attacked it directly, but because I had simply ceased protecting it. In just 72 hours, her perfect world started to crumble. And that I knew terrified her to her core. Her mother's call came 3 nights later. "Hale, please, just speak to her. She's not herself lately." A bitter laugh almost escaped my lips. "Oh, I think she's precisely herself," I countered, the words laced with a truth that even I was just beginning to grasp. That same evening, Davina finally called. I let it ring until it died. She tried again, then sent a text. "We need to talk. This isn't how adults handle things." Adults? This from the woman who scrawled ultimatums in lipstick and plundered our accounts as if our shared life was merely a discarded board game. Still, I didn't reply. And that's when she launched her next volley. Something petty, something undeniably public, and something I will never ever forget. Because when control begins to slip through the grasp of someone like Davina, they don't merely panic, they seek to destroy. I had no idea just how far she was willing to go. It began with a subtle comment on a photograph. That's how the news reached me. A college acquaintance, someone I hadn't exchanged words with in years, tagged me in an Instagram post. My finger clicked out of idle curiosity, and there it was, a picture of Davina and Finian at a chic rooftop bar, their arms interlocked, grinning as if they were celebrating a monumental victory. The caption was what turned my blood to ice. "To new beginnings and shedding dead weight. Her freedom, Rasha finally free." My name wasn't explicitly mentioned, but it required no genius to understand precisely what dead weight referred to. My phone erupted with a flurry of notifications before I even closed the app. Some were messages of heartfelt support, others were thinly veiled curiosity masquerading as concern. "Are you all right? What happened? She seems different lately." I didn't respond to a single one. I simply couldn't. I sat in my car, my knuckles white from gripping the steering wheel so tightly I felt the bones grind. It wasn't just the searing betrayal. It was the brazen performance, the public celebration of it, as if discarding me wasn't merely necessary, but a heroic act. And she expected the world to applaud her for it. It was then I understood. She wasn't just trying to move on. She was actively trying to erase me, rewriting our entire history, casting me as the burdensome anchor, while she, the free spirit, was destined to soar. I wanted to scream, to unleash the unvarnished truth, to share the damning screenshots, to meticulously list every manipulation, every silent punishment she'd inflicted over the years. But I didn't. I knew that would only fuel her chosen narrative. The unstable ex who just couldn't let go. Instead, I pursued a path quieter, yet infinitely sharper. I scheduled a meeting with a lawyer, not a casual acquaintance, not a favor, but a seasoned professional. Someone who didn't know me, didn't care for the drama, only for irrefutable facts. We met in a sterile office with gray walls and unforgiving chairs. I recounted everything: the financial accounts, the abrupt transfer, the property documents Davina had subtly coerced me into signing. She listened intently, asked precise questions, took meticulous notes. When I finished, she leaned forward, her gaze unwavering. "Good," she stated. "You're not too late, but you need to stop reacting emotionally. Start acting legally." This was the exact moment I stopped being the man who simply left and became the man who would fight back. The crucial detail about Davina Sterling was her unwavering belief that no one could ever outwit her. She was accustomed to being the sharpest mind in any room, or at the very least, the most cunning. That's why it shattered her composure when my lawyer initiated a freeze on the joint account she believed she had meticulously emptied. It turned out a small portion of my money, a forgotten bonus, was still in the processing pipeline. And legally, that seemingly minor detail changed absolutely everything. Suddenly, her calls resumed. Not to apologize, not even to engage in genuine conversation. Just a barrage of missed calls, one after another, like a frantic pounding on a door she herself had once contemptuously slammed shut. I didn't answer. I knew better. My lawyer's words echoed in my mind. Let her panic. Panic makes people sloppy. And panic, she certainly did. A week later, I returned to my motel room to find a handwritten letter slipped beneath the door. No envelope, just my name scrawled in shaky cursive. I opened it with a nod of suspicion, bracing myself for venom. Instead, it began, I never wanted to hurt you. Classic Davina, still unable to own her actions. She rambled on about how she hadn't envisioned things unfolding this way, how she felt lost and confused within the confines of our marriage. But never once did she utter the word sorry. Never once did she accept genuine accountability. Buried in the final paragraph, the true motive for her plea emerged. Please ask your lawyer to lift the freeze. I desperately need access to pay some personal expenses. There it was, laid bare. Not regret, but profound inconvenience. She wasn't seeking reconciliation. She was attempting to regain her lost leverage. I didn't respond. I simply folded the letter and tucked it away. It no longer wounded me. It merely filled me with a quiet, hollow embarrassment. I had spent years believing her volatile moods were storms I had to weather. I hadn't comprehended that I was her essential shelter. Without me, she was utterly exposed. I began to sleep more soundly, to eat with genuine appetite. I took leisurely walks, indulged in movies I genuinely enjoyed, laughed at truly silly things. And yet, despite the newfound tranquility, I knew this wasn't truly over. Davina Sterling was not the kind of person who simply let go. She was the kind who pulled relentlessly at strings until something inevitably snapped. As calm as the surface appeared, something dark was stirring just beneath. The unraveling had indeed begun, but who it would consume first remained a chilling mystery. It was just past 10 p.m. when a soft knock sounded at my door. I was half asleep on the lumpy motel bed, engrossed in an old film, hoping for a rare night of undisturbed peace. The knocking wasn't loud. It was deliberate, hushed, as if the person on the other side didn't wish to rouse the neighbors. Only me. I remained motionless at first, staring at the door, waiting. Another knock. 3 slow, insistent taps. I rose, approaching quietly, my heart thudding inexplicably. Then her voice, thin and strained, pierced the flimsy wood. Hale, please, I need to talk. Davina. I didn't move to open it. Hale, I know you're in there. Her voice cracked, a carefully rehearsed calm giving way to raw frustration at my silence. I remained utterly still. She exhaled sharply. You're not even going to hear me out after everything? After everything. My God. I wanted to laugh, a bitter, hollow sound, but I remained silent. I just stood there, watching her blurred silhouette shift behind the frosted glass. They froze my credit cards. I can't even make rent on the studio apartment. I'm behind on absolutely everything. Is this truly who you've become, Hale? You said you loved me. Still, I uttered nothing, because if I had spoken, I might have erupted in a furious yell. I might have reminded her that she was the architect of this chaos, the one who emptied our accounts, the one who publicly smeared my name, the one who played house with Finian Gray as if our marriage had been nothing more than a failed experiment. But more than that, I was terrified that if I opened that door even an inch, she would somehow slip back into my life, insidiously, like smoke through a crack. So I didn't. After a long minute, I heard the telltale click of her heels turning on the concrete, the sound fading into the desolate quiet of the walkway. I waited a full 10 minutes before slowly opening the door and peering out. Nothing but the empty, still parking lot. I closed it again, even slower this time. But inside, I was far from calm. I was trembling, not from fear, but from a profound, simmering rage. Because the woman who once commanded me to yield or endure had finally come crawling, and I felt no satisfaction. Only a deep, chilling disgust. She didn't regret what she'd done. She regretted losing control, and that I knew with a chilling certainty meant one thing. This wasn't the end. This was just her next calculated setup. Weeks bled into months. No more desperate late-night knocks. No more accusatory letters. No more sinister lipstick messages on mirrors. Just silence. The kind of silence that once paralyzed me with dread. But now it felt like profound, hard-won peace. Davina Sterling finally stopped attempting to twist the narrative. Perhaps enough people had seen through her performance. Or perhaps she simply realized she no longer commanded an audience willing to believe her carefully constructed fictions. Finian Gray vanished from her social media photos. Her public pages went dark. I heard through Nico that she'd moved out of the city entirely, seeking clarity, she'd apparently told someone. But I no longer cared where she went. I had finally stopped tracking her shadow. I spent that time meticulously building something I hadn't felt in years, a life that truly felt mine. It wasn't glamorous. I worked a quiet, fulfilling job at a local design firm, lived in a modest apartment with a temperamental dryer and a creaky hallway. But I woke up each morning without the familiar knot of anxiety in my stomach. I cultivated new friendships, genuine ones. I even started writing again, not about her, but about the version of myself I had lost along the way. And slowly, imperceptibly, without even realizing it, I forgave myself. Not for leaving, but for staying so long in a place where I had to shrink myself just to survive. One languid afternoon, browsing a sprawling flea market, I spotted a small, humble mirror for sale, cheap, framed in chipped blue wood. But there was something about it that compelled me to stop. I picked it up, gazing at my own reflection. And this time, I didn't see failure or weakness. I saw a man who had finally ceased begging to be chosen. I bought it. I hung it by my front door. Every time I leave my apartment now, I see it, and I remember, you don't have to shout to be free. Sometimes silence is the loudest statement you can make. This simple truth changed my life in 30 days. Imagine what it could do for yours.